People with disabled children, what's your most memorable moment with them? I thought autism was the challenge, until my ex-wife's family tried to take my son. That's when I realized the real danger wasn't his condition, it was them. My son was 5 the first time he told me he wished he was normal. It wasn't during one of his meltdowns or after a rough therapy session. No, it was after the 4th of July. Fireworks. We were in the backyard, and he was curled up in my lap, hands over his ears, rocking back and forth. When it was over, I whispered that everything was okay now. That's when he looked up at me, eyes wide and red from crying, and said, "Normal boys don't cry at fireworks." That moment broke me. He didn't come up with that idea on his own. It was planted, specifically by Jared, my ex-brother-in-law. Jared, who thought he was an expert in everything because he played football in high school and once fixed his own truck. That same Jared had looked my son in the eye and told him that real boys don't cry, especially not over sounds. My son is high-functioning autistic, cognitively brilliant. He can solve puzzles most adults struggle with. He reads better than any kid in his class. But loud noises overwhelm him. Bright lights confuse him. Crowds? Forget it. It's not that he's broken. His brain just works differently. But to Jared, that made him defective. My wife left us when my son was 4, and she blamed him for it. She called him difficult, told him he was too much. I watched her kneel down to his level, brush back his hair, and say, "You're the reason this family is falling apart?" Then she stood up and walked out the door. She never looked back. And as awful as that was, what came after was worse. Her family didn't just hover, they invaded. First came the helpful advice, then the unexpected visits, then Jared, always Jared, making comments about how my son needed to toughen up. Then came the gas station. Jared had offered to take him for ice cream, a simple treat, right? But instead, he forgot my son at a gas station 10 miles away. Said it was an accident. CPS got involved, but nothing came of it. At least not legally, but it planted a seed. That's when the in-laws pounced. My ex-wife's parents filed for emergency custody. They didn't use the gas station incident. No, they used my son's autism against us, claimed that his meltdowns were signs of abuse, that me letting him scream during thunderstorms was evidence of neglect, that when he bit a classmate during sensory overload, it meant I was teaching him to be violent. None of that was true. My son loved me. He'd run to the door every day when I got home, arms outstretched, jumping up and down like I'd been gone for years. I was his safe place, his home. But none of that mattered in court. They gathered screenshots, twisted our reality, and hired a lawyer so slimy I could practically see the grease on his suit. He painted me as negligent, as dangerous. All I had was the truth. And my son. I knew the courtroom would be hard for him, so I prepared him. We watched videos of old court proceedings. We practiced with stuffed animals. I showed him how to breathe when it got too loud. I explained everything, not just the process, but the truth. I told him I loved him, over and over again. And when trial day came, he surprised everyone. But that part of the story, that moment where everything changed, I'll get to soon. Because first, you need to understand just how deep the scars went and how far his mother's family was willing to go. He turned the page slowly, the soft rustle echoing louder than the murmurs in the courtroom. There, neatly sketched in pencil, was a small house. A sun shone above it. The lines were exact, carefully drawn with a ruler. It looked peaceful, calm, safe. He tapped the page gently and said, "This is what I want. A quiet house, where nobody watches us, where I can read my books, and Dad can help me with my science projects, and nobody says I'm broken." For a moment, the courtroom was silent. Even the judge didn't speak. Then Maria's attorney stood up, trying to shatter the moment. "Your Honor, while this is very touching, the child has clearly been coached." "I don't get coached," my son cut in sharply, his voice clearer, stronger than before. "I observe, I analyze, I conclude." He tapped his notebook. That's how my brain works. Judge Patel raised her hand, commanding silence. Continue, young man. I watched my son take a breath. His small chest rose and fell as he gathered himself. Yesterday, Uncle Jared came to our house. My head snapped up. What? That? I hadn't known. A cold sensation crept up my spine. I was supposed to be at school, he continued, but I had a stomachache. Dad let me stay home. I was in my room when Uncle Jared came to the back door. He didn't know I was there. He was on the phone. He looked down at his notebook, his hands trembling slightly. He said, "Once we get the kid, we'll make sure he never sees his father again. Maria just needs to play her part for a few more days." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, chairs scraping back. Maria's face turned pale. Her parents exchanged frantic looks. Jared shot to his feet, pointing an angry finger at my son. "He's lying!" "Sit down, sir," Judge Patel barked, her voice like a blade of steel. She turned to my son. "Are you certain about what you heard?" He nodded solemnly. "I recorded it." He pulled a small voice recorder from his jacket pocket, the one doctor Chen recommended for moments when writing was too hard. The tiny plastic device looked even smaller in his trembling hand. "Dad says evidence matters," he said, so I collected evidence. Patrick, my lawyer, rushed forward and handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to Judge Patel. She put on a pair of headphones, pressing play. The courtroom was hushed as she listened. Her face changed slowly. Lines deepened. Her brows furrowed. When she finally removed the headphones, she set them down carefully, but the sound of that soft click seemed louder than a shout. "This court will recess for 30 minutes, she said firmly. "Counsel for both parties, in my chambers. Now." As the attorneys filed out, Maria turned to me, her eyes wide. Was it shock? Guilt? Or just a performance? The doors to the judge's chambers shut with a heavy thud. My son returned to our table, his shoulders sagging. He looked pale, exhausted, sweat glistening at his hairline. "You did amazing," I whispered, pulling him gently into a side hug, careful not to overwhelm him. "Why didn't you tell me Jared came to the house?" "I was collecting data," he said, matter of fact. "Dr. Chen says. Sometimes you have to observe before you intervene." I smiled, even as my heart ached. My brilliant, methodical son. When the court resumed, Judge Patel's tone was grave. The wooden gavel in her hand looked heavier now. "Based on the new evidence and today's testimony, I'm issuing an immediate and expanded restraining order against Jared Wilson. He is prohibited from coming within 500 feet of this child or his father." She turned to Maria. "This court is deeply troubled by what we've heard. While you may not have orchestrated this plan, your petition appears to be part of a scheme created by your family." Maria's face crumpled. "Your Honor, I didn't know." "Save it for your testimony," the judge continued, ordering an investigation into the harassment we'd endured. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. But that hope would be tested before the day was done. As we walked through the parking lot toward our car, I heard the rapid click of heels behind us. "Maria!" "Wait!" she called. "Please, just 1 minute." Patrick stepped forward, blocking her path. "My client has a restraining order against—" "Not me," she said quickly. "Just let me talk to him. Please, I need to explain." I looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "We'll hear her out." My son pressed close to my side, his body tense. I placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling his heart racing. And then Maria began to speak, not as a threat, but as a mother on the edge of something fragile, something real. He reached out and held my hand. "Dad," he said softly, "do you think we'll ever have to run again?" I hesitated. I didn't want to lie. He was too smart for that. But I also didn't want to feed the fear that had ruled too much of his childhood already. "I don't think so," I said, brushing the hair from his forehead. "We've done everything we can to be safe. We built a new life, and it's strong, and it's ours." He nodded slowly, thoughtful as always. "Okay, I like it here. I like Zoe. I like our roof." "I do too," I said with a tired smile. "And if anything ever did happen, anything at all, you know what we'd do?" He looked up at me with wide eyes. "What?" "We'd face it, together, like we always do." He gave a small, satisfied smile. "Together." I turned out the light and sat outside his room for a while, listening to the soft turning of pages in his notebook as he wrote, his nightly ritual. Eventually, the scribbling stopped, and I peeked in to find him fast asleep, the notebook still open, his pencil resting on the edge. I picked it up carefully and glanced at what he'd written. Mission log, day 1095. New home, secure. Threats, contained. Sky visibility, excellent. Emotional stability, improving. Conclusion, hypothesis still holding. Prediction, long-term outcome, hopeful. I closed the notebook gently and returned it to his nightstand. He was right. We had faced so much, more than any child should ever have to, and we came out stronger. The past still lingered in pieces, in creaky floorboards that made me flinch, in crowded spaces that made him pull away. But we weren't trapped by it anymore. We were living, really living. The next morning, we framed the drawing and hung it in his room, right above the shelves lined with carefully labeled books and space memorabilia. It looked perfect there, a quiet, powerful reminder of how far we'd come. Years from now, maybe he'll forget the apartment's creaking radiator, or the coded alerts from Diane, or even the name Jared entirely. But I hope he'll always remember that drawing, that house, that feeling, the one where he first realized he wasn't broken, just brave, just different. And that was more than enough. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing and sharing it. Somewhere out there, another parent might be quietly fighting for their child, and they need to know they're not alone. Let them know. Let them find hope too. And if you've ever had to start over for the ones you love, drop a comment. We'd love to hear your story. Until next time, take care of each other.